The bus groaned as it wound its way through the endless stretch of pine forests. The road had long stopped being smooth, it was a narrow, cracked ribbon cutting through the misty heart of northern Canada. Ethan Rivers pressed his forehead to the cold window, staring at the endless green outside. For a moment, he thought he saw movement between the trees, a flicker of something tall and human-shaped. But when he blinked, it was gone. By the time the bus rolled into Evergreen Hollow, the sky was bruised purple, the last light bleeding behind the mountains. The town looked forgotten, a scattering of old wooden houses, a silent gas station, and a main street lined with antique lamps that flickered like dying fireflies. A wooden sign creaked in the wind. Greater than welcome to Evergreen Hollow, EST. 1897. Ethan stepped down, pulling his coat tighter. The cold here was different, it carried whispers. He felt it brush past his ears, as if the wind itself spoke. He wasn't here by chance. 3 weeks ago, he had received a yellowed envelope addressed in a handwriting he recognized but hadn't seen in years, his late uncle's. Inside was a single note. Greater than, Evergreen Hollow hides what I never found. Find the man who walks when the moon is full. His uncle had been an explorer, obsessed with northern legends. Everyone said he'd gone mad in his last years, chasing ghost stories. Yet now, standing in this strange, quiet town, Ethan wondered if there had been truth in his madness. He checked into a small inn built from dark logs, the scent of pine and smoke heavy inside. The innkeeper, Mrs. Halbrook, was a pale, thin woman with eyes too sharp for her age. She handed him an old iron key and said, "Greater than, you're the first outsider in months. The Hollow doesn't take kindly to strangers after dark." Her tone was calm, but her fingers trembled slightly as she spoke. Ethan smiled politely. "I'll be careful." Mrs. Halbrook's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Care won't help you if he finds you." That night, the wind howled like a living thing. Ethan sat near the cabin's window, his notebook open, trying to write. But the silence of the forest pressed against the glass, thicker than darkness. Then he saw it, movement near the treeline. At first, it was a shadow among shadows, gliding between the pines. But as the moon broke through the clouds, he saw the outline clearly, a tall figure, barefooted, moving with a strange rhythm, too fluid for a man, too slow for a beast. He froze. The figure turned its head slightly, as though aware of his gaze. For a heartbeat, their eyes met across the clearing. Cold, empty, timeless. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and burst outside. The wind slapped his face, sharp and icy. But the clearing was empty. Only a faint trail of footprints, large, bare, deep, led into the woods. He followed a few steps before the sound of rustling stopped him. Somewhere ahead, the forest sighed. He retreated. The next morning, the town looked ordinary again, as if the night had never happened. At the diner, he tried to ask the locals about the figure, but their faces tightened. Nobody wanted to talk. Until one old man, sitting by the window, spoke quietly without looking up from his coffee. "Greater than, you saw him, didn't you? The walker." Ethan turned. "Who?" "Greater than, Samuel Dyer," the man said. "A trapper. Vanished in these woods 100 years ago. Some say he froze. Some say he found something worse. But every full moon, he comes back. Looking for the ones who call his name." Ethan forced a laugh. "You don't believe that, do you?" The old man's eyes met his, gray, hollow. "Belief doesn't matter, son. The forest remembers." That night, Ethan couldn't resist. He followed the same trail again, the one that led into the trees. Each step crunched over frost-bitten leaves. The air was colder than before, the mist thicker, almost alive. His flashlight flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. The world fell into silence. Only his breathing and the faint thud of his heart remained. Then, from behind him, a whisper, low, calm, and terribly human. "Greater than, you shouldn't have come here, Rivers." Ethan turned slowly. A man stood there, barefoot on the snow, wearing tattered 19th century clothes. His eyes glowed faintly, not with light, but with memory. The smell of cold earth surrounded him. Ethan stepped back, but the ground seemed to shift beneath him. The figure tilted its head, studying him like prey. "Greater than, the forest remembers," it said again, almost tenderly. "And now, it remembers you." A wind roared through the trees, extinguishing the moonlight. Ethan screamed, but the forest swallowed the sound whole. The sun rose pale and weak over Evergreen Hollow, casting a dull gold light through the fog. Ethan Rivers woke with a gasp, drenched in cold sweat. His flashlight lay on the floor, batteries drained, though he could have sworn it was new. His boots were muddy. His clothes reeked faintly of smoke and pine. For a long moment, he sat at the edge of the bed, staring at his trembling hands. Had it been real? The glowing eyes, the voice that knew his name. His mind told him it was a dream. But the mud on his boots whispered otherwise. He stepped outside. The morning air bit at his skin. Down by the forest edge, he found something half buried in the frost. An old brass compass, its glass cracked, its needle spinning slowly though there was no wind. On the back, engraved in faint letters, was a name. Greater than S. Dyer. Ethan's pulse quickened. The name from the legend. The trapper who had vanished a century ago. He took the compass to Mrs. Halbrook. The innkeeper's eyes widened when she saw it. Greater than, where did you find this? She whispered. In the woods, near my cabin. Her face turned ashen. Then you've gone too far already. Ethan frowned. Too far into what? You all talk like the forest is alive. Mrs. Halbrook's gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the fog thickened, curling like smoke between the pines. Because it is. There's something under those trees. Something older than this town. He leaned closer. Tell me. But she only shook her head. Find the old chapel by the river. Father Morrow kept records. He knew Samuel Dyer better than anyone. That was all she said. By afternoon, Ethan reached the edge of the forest. The air was unnaturally still. Even the birds were silent. He followed a narrow dirt path winding toward the river. Halfway there, he spotted a cabin, rotting, half collapsed, swallowed by vines. He hesitated, then stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the light that slipped through the broken roof. The air smelled of age and wet wood. A table stood in the center, covered with old tools, jars, and something else, a journal, its pages yellowed but intact. The name on the inside cover made his throat tighten. Greater than Samuel Dyer, 1897. He flipped through the pages, heart pounding. The handwriting was uneven, growing more frantic with each entry. Greater than, the hollow is not what it seems. The forest breathes. It speaks. Each night, I hear it whisper my name. I followed the lights into the northern grove. There's a well there, stone, ancient. It hums like it's alive. If I don't return, tell no one to come. The forest must not wake. The last line was smudged with what looked like blood. Ethan's hands shook as he closed the journal. A sound came from outside, slow footsteps. He turned toward the door, but no one appeared. The forest beyond looked ordinary, but something about its stillness felt wrong. Expectant. He pocketed the journal and hurried to the chapel. The old chapel stood by the frozen river, its wooden cross tilting like a broken arm. Inside, the pews were covered in dust. Faded paintings of saints watched him from the walls. Near the altar, he found a cabinet filled with old church records. He flipped through until he found the one marked 1897. Samuel Dyer, missing. Presumed dead. Final confession recorded by Father Morrow. The confession was written in shaky handwriting. Greater than, forgive me, Father. I heard it calling. The voice from the well. It promised me warmth, but gave me the cold. The forest is not God's creation, it's his shadow. It remembers every soul it takes. The words ended abruptly, followed by an ink smear. Ethan stepped back, heart racing. The same words again, the forest remembers. Suddenly, the chapel door slammed shut. The candles, unlit for decades, flickered to life, one by one. A gust of icy air swept through the aisle. And then, from the dark end of the chapel, a voice. Greater than, you found what you weren't meant to, Rivers. Ethan spun around. The same tall figure stood there, barefoot, eyes glowing faintly. The air around him shimmered with cold. Greater than, Samuel Dyer. Ethan whispered. The figure tilted its head. That name died a century ago. Ethan stepped backward, clutching the journal. What do you want? Greater than, to be left alone, the voice said, almost human. But your kind never listens. Every 100 years, someone comes looking, and the hollow must take them too. The candles flared, their flames stretching like claws. The walls groaned. Ethan bolted for the door, but it wouldn't move. The voice came again, closer now, almost beside his ear. Greater than, you shouldn't have followed the compass. The next thing he knew, the world went black. When he opened his eyes, the sun was rising again. He was lying beside the riverbank, the chapel nowhere in sight. Only the journal remained in his hands. But the last page had changed. A new line, written in fresh ink. Greater than, the forest remembers you now, Ethan Rivers. The morning mist coiled low across the river like smoke from unseen fires. Ethan Rivers stood at the edge of the water, his reflection trembling. His hands were numb, clutching the journal that should not exist. The last line, the forest remembers you now, burned in his mind like a curse. The town was silent when he returned. The diner door hung open, coffee cups left mid-table, as if everyone had simply walked away. The fog pressed down heavier than ever, muffling every sound. He reached Mrs. Halbrook's inn, calling her name. No answer. Inside, chairs were overturned, a kettle hissed on the stove though no one tended it. On the counter lay an envelope with his name written in trembling cursive. He tore it open. Greater than, Ethan, leave before nightfall. Once the hollow remembers your face, it won't let you go. The well in the northern grove is its heart. Destroy it if you can, but no one ever has. The letter ended there, a smear of ink trailing into nothing. Ethan exhaled shakily. He knew he should run, catch the next bus, vanish back into the world of lights and traffic and sanity. But curiosity, that same hunger that had driven him across the country, was stronger than fear. He had to see the well. By dusk, he was deep within the forest again. The compass spun wildly in his pocket, the needle fighting invisible winds. The trees grew denser, older, their bark ridged like scarred skin. The air pulsed, slow, rhythmic, almost like breathing. At last, he reached a clearing. In the center yawned a stone well, its rim carved with strange, weather-worn symbols. A faint hum rose from below, so deep it trembled through his bones. He stepped closer. The journal in his hand fluttered open by itself, its pages whipping in the wind until one stopped him cold, an entry he'd never seen before. Greater than, to whoever finds this, know that the hollow feeds on memory. It takes names, faces, years. To kill it, you must give it back what it gave you, its story. Ethan stared down the well. Its story, he murmured. It remembers through us. He dropped a small stone. It didn't hit bottom. The hum deepened. Then a whisper floated up, soft as breath. Greater than, Ethan Rivers. He stumbled backward. Shadows thickened around the trees, twisting into faint human shapes. Faces flickered within them, men, women, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. All of them watching him. The air grew colder. And from the mist stepped Samuel Dyer. He looked almost human now, less phantom, more man carved from frost and grief. Greater than, you read my words, Samuel said quietly. You followed my path. Ethan swallowed hard. You wanted to be found, didn't you? Samuel's hollow gaze lifted to the sky. No. I wanted to be forgotten. But the hollow feeds on remembrance. Every story told keeps it alive. Every legend repeated is a heartbeat for the forest. Ethan's breath caught. Then to end it. Greater than, you must silence it, Samuel whispered. Erase the tale. Burn it all. Including me. Wind screamed through the clearing. The shadows surged closer, their forms rippling like smoke. The journal trembled violently in Ethan's hands. The well pulsed with a sickly green light. Greater than, do it, Samuel said, voice breaking. End the remembering. Ethan hesitated. He'd spent his life chasing stories, preserving them, never destroying. Yet here was a story that devoured anyone who told it. He struck a match. The tiny flame fluttered, fragile against the dark. Greater than, forgive me, he whispered, and dropped the journal into the well. A roar burst from the depths, shaking the ground. The trees bent, screaming in wood and wind. Samuel's form began to unravel, his eyes soft with relief. Greater than, thank you. Then he was gone, disintegrated into ash and light. The well cracked down the middle, its glow fading until only silence remained. When Ethan opened his eyes again, it was dawn. The clearing was empty. Birds sang faintly, as if testing the new quiet. The well had collapsed into a pile of stones. He stumbled back toward town. Where there had been houses, there was only forest, young pines sprouting where streets once lay. The town itself was gone, swallowed as if it had never existed. At the roadside, a car slowed beside him. The driver, a woman in a red jacket, rolled down her window. Lost, sir. There's no town out here. Closest one's 50 miles back. Ethan looked past her into the trees. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a familiar figure watching from the mist, a man in old clothes, smiling faintly. Then it was gone. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess I took a wrong turn. She offered him a ride. As the car pulled away, Ethan reached into his coat pocket. The brass compass lay there, still spinning, but this time, it stopped. Pointing straight north, toward the forest. He closed his eyes. Somewhere behind him, carried on the morning wind, came a whisper, soft, ancient, almost grateful. Greater than, the hollow remembers, but so do you. The car disappeared down the road, leaving Evergreen Hollow buried once more beneath silence and myth.